Welcome to The Good Pod. Today, we're talking about Season 1, Episode 13 of The Good Wife, titled Bad. I'm one of your hosts, Jason Reed. With me, as always, my co-host, who, here for two, shall be named Loretta Krispinski. Loretta, you good?
No, I am not. I will not be Loretta Lipinski, but I am good as opposed to bad. Yeah, that was a little sneaky little find in that case.
Yeah, that was fun. Marissa,
Yeah.
Marissa, are you good?
Yes, Marissa is great. Thank you
All
so
right,
much for
good.
asking. How's Jason? How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
Always good. Always having fun diving into season 1. We're trucking along. We're 13 episodes in, almost to the season 1 finale. So we got some big revelations happening. We're moving the story along. Before we get too much into the nitty gritty, I do want to remind you, great listeners or watchers, however you're digesting this podcast, there are several ways to help us out, several free, fun ways to help us out. You can always review us, whether you're watching on YouTube, you can hit the little thumbs up button down here. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or any other podcatcher, you can always rate us 5 stars. If you're listening on Apple, you can also leave us a written review. We love those. If you have any comments, questions, or anything you want to get in touch with us about, you can always email us at thegoodpodfeedback@gmail.com. As always, thank you so much for rating, reviewing us. It means a lot to us, and it helps other people find the podcast.
Yeah.
So Marissa, Marissa, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of people who love The Good Wife, but don't know there's a Good Wife podcast. So,
Yeah.
I'd love to get more people to know about it. So thank you, everyone, for interacting with us. It helps all of the time.
Yeah, the more it gets shared, the more it gets liked, the more places it pops up, the more the people in charge of these search algorithms push us up to people that they think might be interested. So please help us out in those ways. We would really appreciate it.
Yeah. Jason, we're here in episode 13. Can I tell you, like, I started this episode and I was like, oh, we're almost like, this is like almost to the end. And then I looked it up on IMDb and I'm like, oh, no, we got 10 more episodes. Like, I keep thinking.
I thought last time you said we were at like, you had 16 episodes
for
season 1.
I thought so too, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's 20 something episodes. I guess I didn't like scroll down when I was looking the last time.
But you know what? That makes sense, because when you said 16 episodes last episode, I was like, I don't know, 2010 just doesn't sound right for 16 episodes. I mean, now you would get like a 6-episode season of TV, but back in 2010, 23 episodes sounds totally right for a season of TV, especially a CBS procedural show. But yeah. I was going off of what you said, Marissa, so apparently we are just barely over halfway done with this season.
But I was mistaken. I was not on the stand, so I didn't perjure myself, but I just was mistaken.
Yeah. So listen, more episodes, the better for me. I'm enjoying the trip down memory lane with you, Marissa. So 10 more episodes of this season. We still got a ways to go, but I'm enjoying the journey.
Yeah, it's been fun. This week we got to see what we know, someone we know as an old friend. But if you're just watching The Good Wife for the first time, Mr. Colin Sweeney is someone who makes his self known on this series as a whole, and so it was kind of fun to see his origin story.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see, because if you are a new watcher of The Good Wife, just know that this man will be back several more times, and each time the story and what is going on gets even more and more ludicrous and ridiculous. So buckle up for the ride. Colin Sweeney is definitely a fun time every time he shows up on the show.
Yeah, I still am asking myself, to do it? Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
like, what's going on?
It's like,
what's there?
They really kind of leave it open-ended, and those are a lot of like that's kind of an attribute of Colin Sweeney. Almost every time we see him, we're just like, still not sure. No matter what the outcome is of whatever trial he's dealing with at the moment, we're just like, I just don't know. I don't know what to think. That's one of the beauties of the character, is that they leave it so open-ended.
Yeah.
As to whether he did the crime or not. So that's just a fun part of his character.
Yeah, and I know why I said 16 episodes last episode, but you can tell we are getting towards the end of the season, because the there's not as many storylines per episode. This week we only have Colin Sweeney's case, and then we have Peter's case. We don't have any Jackie Alicia drama. We don't have any kids Like
I
Jackie's
mean,
not hosing anyone down with the hose on their
we do
suit or
have,
anything.
but we do have a weird C plot
We
of
do.
Diane and guns, where I'm like, at the end of the episode, I'm just like, what was this really for? Because they didn't really have any huge payoff. Nothing huge happened. It's kind of a weird little diversion into a different thing altogether.
I have theories. We shall get there. Shall we start at the case of the week, though? Shall we talk about our
Let's
friend?
let's
Our
let's start
friend,
with the
Colin
main. Yeah,
Sweeney?
our buddy Colin Sweeney. Let's start with the main case of the week. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So this case was taken on by the firm basically because Will wants Colin Sweeney's business. He is a rich man. He can bring a lot of business to the firm, but he is definitely not a likable character. Diane, right off the bat, is like, you want to defend this dude? And Alicia, even when she's assigned a second chair, is like, yo, look, I think this guy killed his wife. His story, Colin Sweeney's story as a whole, is he did have a criminal trial where he was found out not guilty for killing his wife, but his wife's daughter Charlotte is bringing up a civil trial. So this is very like OJ esque in terms of what he's being charged with, and
Yeah, it's very
and even like the sentiments around him, like everybody thinks he did it.
it's very OJ tinted, of course, because it follows the same lines, right? OJ got found innocent of killing his wife and her friend, but then got taken to a civil court and was found guilty there and owed the Nicole Simpson family millions and millions of dollars. So it was very interesting to see his name get dropped several times throughout the episodes as being a comparison to this.
It's also an interesting aspect. I remember when it happened with OJ, I was all like, well, that can't happen because of double jeopardy. And I then like to find out, because I was in eighth grade, like to find out that the our system allows for not only a criminal charge but a civil charge for like the same type of thing. You can
Right.
still be held responsible in the eyes of the court in one way or another. I think is an interesting aspect to our justice system as we see play out here. Alicia does get assigned to the case because, first of all, Will's first chair, but also Peter prosecuted Colin Sweeney, so having Alicia on his defense is going to make a statement in court. So this is
Yeah.
why Alicia's assigned to it. And speaking of making a statement in court, we're introduced to Charlotte's lawyer. She's just from Michigan. I
She's
can't believe she
she's just
moved
from Michigan,
away.
don't you know?
Yeah,
Don't you know I'm just from Michigan? I don't know anything about any murders. I've never had to, I never had to witness something so criminal, so vile. This is a Colin Sweet. I'm just a sweet little innocent lawyer. I don't know what I'm doing, Judge. As I, bend over to show you my cleavage. I'm so sorry.
what is this? Is this a courtroom? Oh my goodness. I have no
What am I
idea.
doing here? Oh my
Oh my
gosh.
gosh. Let me just look that up. Yeah, we are introduced to Nancy Cozier, who is played by Mamie Gummer, who has been seen in True Detective and Emily Owens, MD.
Yeah, she was a titular Emily Owens, MD, which I didn't even know that was a thing. It's
Yeah, I
like,
was like, what is that, Jason?
yeah.
Like, have
As
you
I'm looking
watched
her up,
it?
I'm just like, okay, she was the star of her own show. That's great. I've unfortunately never heard of the show, but hey, you do you, Mamie. You do you. She's again. I mean, we talk about all the time with it's that person, it's that guy, that girl, and she's definitely one of those. You definitely have seen her in other and many other like many of these people that pop up on this show. You see them in several other procedurals. If you look up any one of these people's IMDb's, it's just chock filled with one episode stints on procedurals. It's so interesting looking up the people that appear on the show and seeing what their showbiz life has been, and seeing that they were in so many of the same procedurals as other people. It's kind of like this big community of like guest stars for one episode. It's so interesting.
It is that between that and like medical shows, I feel like that it's like the American League and the National League of the MLB. Like you've got like
Mhm. Yeah.
two similar things, like different rules, but everyone can kind of like swap in for each other at some point
Hmm.
because everyone has been on a procedural or everyone has been in a medical show at some point.
Yeah.
Will's strategy here at the start of the case is to move for this to be a bench trial. So he does not want there to be a jury involved whatsoever. He's just like, the judge can figure this out to see if there is anything to do here. But Miss Cozier wins this argument, and the judge decides, okay, let's have a jury. And this is where we're introduced to her. Oh shucks, style that we
Mm-hmm.
see throughout this case. And then she is also someone who will return throughout the series. And we were talking before pod, we think also in The Good Fight, but as we continue our journey, we will confirm that.
Yeah, it is interesting that her act does seem to work with the judge because at first she just seems like this experienced person, but then she puts on her kind of like, oh shucks, I'm just a farm girl. I don't know what I'm doing here, and it works with the judge who seems to be really down for this. I love that Alicia just calls it out immediately. She's like, oh, okay, I see what she's doing. Alicia's very sharp in this
Yeah.
episode, as we see like when she meets with Colin Sweeney. It's just like she has no qualms about telling him like, yeah, I think you probably did it. And it, we don't really delve too deep into the ethics of defending someone you might actually think is guilty. It's just kind of like, well, it's your job, so you got to do it.
Yeah.
And Alicia's just like, yeah, I think you probably did it, but I got to defend you anyway.
But the thing that was interesting about that exchange was that Colin Sweeney is like, oh, really? You think I did
Yeah,
it? He's like, he's almost like, I don't want, I'm going to use the words turned on, but not, he's like, not turned on in a sexual way. He sees it as like a challenge and a
I,
welcomed
I
engagement
think
of
you.
like, oh, well, if she thinks I'm a murderer, this is great. And
I think he probably is turned on because I feel like a
he
stiff
is a
wind
little,
can turn on Colin Sweeney because he, as we find out during this whole thing, Colin Sweeney is into a lot of things sexually.
yes,
So I wouldn't be surprised if this even if just someone being real with him just kind of turns him on in this way. I think he finds that Alicia could be a good sparring partner for him. So he really likes Alicia's not someone that's going to is not a yes person to him. So I think that
right.
really kind of appeals to him in having Alicia as someone that he can bounce things off of and can kind of spar with.
And meanwhile, Will's like, yeah, anything you want because I want your business. So
I love Will's face as Alicia and Colin are just kind of going back and forth. He's like, okay,
it's like,
cool. Like,
anyway, go like sign this contract so I can be your
yeah, sure.
lawyer.
Can I get you
For
guys a room? Like, I'm sure Colin's like, yes, please do. He plays creepy so well. And Colin Sweeney is played by
yeah,
Dylan Baker, who should, in all rights, should be much more famous than he is because he has been in pretty much everything. Something I know him from, there was a little known TV series called Drive back in the day. And it was basically like, it was this show about an illegal cross country race. And it was one of those shows where it was like, these people are here for their different reasons to win money or whatever, for whatever. It was kind of like one of those lost ish things where
okay.
everyone has a backstory. So we flash back to everyone's backstory. We figure out why they're in this illegal cross country race. It was such an interesting show. And that is what sticks out of my mind for Dylan Baker. And of course, he is Dr. Kurt Connors in the Spider-Man movies, which as being a huge nerd myself, is definitely something that sticks in my mind for him as well. But he's someone that has just been in countless things. He's never had what I would call a true starring role in anything, but he's just that person that's always in stuff.
You know him when you see him, and he always
Yeah,
brings it. Like
yes, for sure.
it's always good to see him on screen.
He was
Dylan
even an
Baker,
audiobook.
like Colin
He was
Sweeney, I could be a little, without, but it's always
yeah.
good to see Dylan Baker.
He was even an audiobook narrator for an audiobook I listened to probably within the last couple years. And I heard his voice and I was like, that sounds like Dylan Baker. And even then I was like, that sounds like that guy. And then I looked it up, I was like, oh yeah, it's Dylan Baker. So yeah, he's everywhere. He's everywhere.
Yeah, he's here, and he's also last we talked a little bit about last episode how Alicia's like, I'm tired of being like the witness wrangler and like trying
The
to
handler.
handle all of these clients, but she's kind of in the same position here with Colin Sweeney. And so Will and Alicia go over to Colin's house and they have a little exchange before Colin comes in and basically says, yeah, I was married to my wife because it was basically all about S&M and basically all about sex. But we had this interesting exchange that I just wanted to pull over to the side of the road and talk about
Mhm.
for a moment because Will is aware that Peter's trial is going on. We will talk about that, or Peter's hearing for a retrial is coming up, and so he's asking Alicia about it. And he's like, "We said we'd have dinner, right? Like before Peter got out." And she's like, "Yeah, we did. We should do that."
Will is like, damn, I am. minute by minute losing my opportunity to take my shot. And he's just like, hey, remember you said we'd have dinner? Don't forget about that. Even if Peter comes home, you could still go out to dinner with me. He just, I don't know what Will's waiting for. He just needs to go ahead and shoot. I think Will is so nervous
Yeah.
because Alicia is so kind of above his league. I think from what he's used to, I think he's a little intimidated to actually just shoot the shot for Alicia. So because he kind of beats around the bush all the time with Alicia, and I think he's just kind of intimidated, nervous a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever really pursued a woman like Alicia and ever saw like he's had a ton of relationships that we have seen, not seen, we've definitely heard about on the show so far, and
Mm-hmm.
none of them have had any substance to them really. It was all just like, I miss your tattoo. Okay. Like
Mm-hmm.
but here we can tell from the first time Will sees Alicia in episode 1, like he cares about her and there's a relationship between them that is from college and has been, bubbling under the surface for a while. So I think you're right. I think he is scared to take that step and kind of change that because again, I am still rewatching Suits, but it reminds me of the great Donna Paulson who says once you cross the line you cannot go back. Like,
Yeah.
so how can you work within this, world of wanting Alicia while also not wanting to lose her at the same time?
Yeah, I just can't wait until Will finally just really
Oh, it's
comes
such a
out with
good,
it.
it's so good.
Yeah, because honestly, I don't remember it, and we were talking a little bit before pod about like this what we're doing, and it's kind of like I remember stuff, but then I don't remember stuff. So it's so much fun rediscovering what I loved about the show before. So I just can't wait till Will finally, I don't know, for lack of a better word, man's up and and decides to just go for it with Alicia.
Oh, I remember. I'll just say
Oh yeah,
that. It was good. It was a
okay,
good time. Um, okay, so back to the case. So Carolyn is Colin's wife, and Carolyn saw that Colin had withdrawn thousands of dollars, and this is what's made her upset. This is kind of what
well that
they're
this is
like
this is the
putting down
logic.
as like the motive for Colin wanting to kill his wife.
Yeah,
Um,
because the logic is that she pulled some receipts right
yeah,
before she died. So that's what they're thinking got her upset, and maybe what got her and Colin arguing. Because I mean, pretty much from the outset of this, everyone, even people on Colin's defense team, are just like, yeah, he probably did it. So let's try and figure out why he did it or what
yeah, it's
happened here.
like trying to find the evidence afterwards of
Yeah,
like trying to make him look like he did it. Um, on the stand, they bring Carolyn's sister, Muriel.
Marielle. Yeah,
Muriel, this family, I don't know, yo, but we learned that she has also slept with Colin, and we wonder, what that did to the everyone's relationship at that point. But this again was presented very, very coyly by Nancy Crozier of like, I have to ask you a question that I really don't want to ask you.
I'm just so embarrassed to bring this
Oh,
up, but I mean, I feel like I guess I have to. I guess it's my job. I'm so sorry.
I'm
But did you
sorry.
f Colin?
Yeah,
Like it's like
yeah,
it's like, and Colin, man, Colin, we find out through this episode, he really gets around. He really is a classic philanderer,
yeah.
and it's we. I feel like we could have had a spinoff of Colin Sweeney and his different dastardly pursuits. I feel like if this was 2024, we'd get some kind of spinoff about Colin Sweeney.
I feel like he is like the Joker for some reason. Not like in a
Oh yeah,
but
he definitely
like
gives that vibe.
yeah, he's got that vibe of, I own the
He
town.
courts
I'm
chaos.
around
Yeah, he
here.
loves.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he loves chaos. He loves to cause chaos. He loves to uh, twist people's perceptions of him, as we'll find out. And so yeah, he's definitely a Joker type of person where he thrives on just like causing havoc.
Yeah. Another piece of evidence that Miss Nancy Cozier brings to the case is the fact that Colin strangled his wife, and then Colin was like, "Well, she was into it. Like, I didn't know that's what happens when you engage in this type of play." So that was also
I love
really
she was
interesting.
in she was into breath play. It's like, oh, okay, that's what you call that. Like,
I loved when Nancy was like, "Oh, what is that?" And he's like, "I'm pretty sure they have it in Michigan too."
Yeah, and Nancy's just like, oh my, I guess I would ask you more questions about that. I'm so sorry.
And yeah,
Oh,
but then
so
she
good.
like snaps out of it. It's like one of the times we see her actually show a real face to Will of like, "Your witness, like
Hmm.
I just did
Yep.
that. I
Gotcha.
yeah." So that was pretty cool. After that though, after, hearing that Carolyn's sister slept with Colin and then Colin actually has a history of strangling his wife in some way, um, the firm decides to change the strategy. We got to change it up to kind of look at Carolyn's sister because Carrie brings up a good point. Carrie's been kind of feeling outside of this case as a whole. And so he's been doing his Carrie thing of tracking what's going on and just trying to bring the right piece of information at the right time. And so this is when he comes in and says to Will, like, hey, what don't you think that Carolyn would be mad at her sister for like sleeping with her?
Well, listen, I'll tell you, Carrie's in the wrong profession because I feel like he should be like a researcher. He should be something else because he brings out he digs through books and figures out stuff, and he brings it to Will. It's like, hey, like this is pretty weird, don't you think? Like I've been looking through all this information. I'm telling you, make the man a researcher, a statistician, something else. 'Cause, I mean, we have yet to see Carrie
In the
really,
courtroom.
yeah, in the courtroom, really kind of bringing his stuff. We saw him in the courtroom one time, and it wasn't that great. So I feel like we're really waiting for that Carrie moment where he shows his stuff in the courtroom. But so far, he's been more of a behind the scenes guy, a behind the scenes champion, and he's really kind of coming through that way for the firm.
Yes. And one of the things he finds out in his research is that there's a everyone, why does everyone have to have a C name
Everyone
in
has
this
C names. That
situation?
really
Like,
tripped
why
me
does
up.
this
Yeah.
have to happen? Okay, so Charlotte, Carolyn's daughter, had a company that was giving out like lots of money. So this is one of the things that Carrie brings up. This will come back into play later, but this is something that they decide to go after. Meanwhile, Colin, we see this interesting little. This kind of just adds to Colin's character. This interesting little like, hey, yo, I need you to provide an alibi for me, drug dealer man on the street. And then there's a conversation afterwards of like, my life improved after people thought that I murdered my wife. Like, I got all the great reservations. People were doing things for me. And he basically says, like, what's the difference if I did it or not? I'm being treated well. And I thought that was just like a really interesting insight into his character at that point.
Into his character and then an interesting commentary on society, right? Because it's like we think about what makes people famous nowadays. People get famous for truly bad stuff all the time
Yeah.
nowadays, and it was even that way in 2010. So it's kind of like, do I does it matter if I murdered someone or not? No, because I'm on Access Hollywood, I'm in the papers, people know my name, and this was before, the big boom of social media and
Yeah.
becoming a social influencer. So you can imagine, like, a Colin Sweeney nowadays would probably be taken 100 times bigger right now. Yeah, it reminds me of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, who killed her mother. Some I think most would probably say for possibly justifiable reasons, but she still committed murder. And when she got out of prison, she became just this instantly famous social media sensation, and people are following her now. Has had TV series. She's doing these high class interviews. It kind of reminds me of that, in that vein, a little bit of like, yeah, they did something horrible, but we can't look away. Like, we still have to follow them and see what they're up to, because
Well,
it doesn't matter what they did. They're famous for something, even
and
if it's
she
bad.
has like teams of people helping to make sure that she's still visible, which I'm sure Colin would
Hmm.
have enjoyed
Yeah,
in 2020 or in
definitely.
2010 as well. Okay, so Alicia meets Nancy to try and get a deal, and this is like Nancy's so committed to her little role in this. Like she's even trying to aw shucks Alicia at this point. She's like, "I'm sorry, I don't remember your name." You don't remember her name? Excuse me. And Alicia calls her out on it, and they basically are like, "We're not going to get a deal at this point." But at the end, Nancy like just puts a little dig. I think it was
Yeah, the mask
gonna
slips
be
ever so
a
slightly. The
dig.
mask slips. It's like, hey, what is it like? The jury hates your client. They kind of love mine. So sorry, sorry about the
Yeah.
luck.
but then at the end, she also leaves and says, "I love your blazer. My mom has one just like
Uh,
it." And I was
oh
like,
man.
"Oh, ho, 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 you went there. You went there." So she's very, very cunning. She knows what she's doing. Meanwhile, we hear the voice in Chicago. It's almost like the voice of God. We got Bill Curtis. He's talking about.
Oh, I didn't know that that was an actual news person
Oh
there.
my gosh. Well, he was also an anchorman. He's like he's in a lot of things. He's also, if you listen to Wait Wait Don't Tell Me, he's on Wait Wait Don't Tell Me on NPR. Anywho, Bill Curtis is like big deal. So he's reporting that there were remains found in the garden of Sweeney's old residence. So Colin basically picked up and moved after his wife was gone missing, as he calls it. Um, but they found these like remains there, and so this is kind of putting another crinkle in the case for everyone, and this is where Carrie's information about um, the dummy corporation that Charlotte had set up comes into play, and they find out that Charlotte's been funding Muriel's rehab
Yeah, yeah, Marielle,
rehabilitation,
I think is.
yeah, her rehabilitation for alcoholism. So there's a lot happening here, but I was happy to hear my good friend, Bill Curtis.
Yeah, you and Bill chop it up
Oh, we go way
every now
back.
and then.
He has told me about pretty much like every natural disaster or major news event of my life. So I feel like him and
Feel
Tom
close to him.
Selling are like the news people who, who raised me. But
Is he still a thing 14 years later? Like, what's
he's
he up to
not
now?
on like he's not on Channel 2, which is the CBS station here, regularly anymore. He is on NPR, and he will come in for like special reports or like
Oh,
big things. So
okay.
he's legit. At first I just heard his voice and I didn't see him on screen, and then when we rewatched it, I was like, "Oh, he's actually there." Everyone has
I
those, right? Like you have your Baltimorean person.
listen. I'm not too versed on local news anchors like you are, Marissa. I'm not. I don't fanboy over my newscasters like you do. I just feel like that's not. I feel like that's part. I feel like that definitely tracks with your personality. I just like, but I'm not in that way. Like I'm not a
There.
big local news guy. Like
And
that's
I
just
will
not me.
like everybody does this, right? Like this is like
Yeah.
a thing that everybody has.
I don't watch my local eyewitness news at 7:30 p.m. Like that's not what
I
I'm up to.
didn't. I just like couldn't change the channel because my parents were watching it. So I just was like, well, I might as well get interested in it. But yes, Bill Curtis letting with some interesting news for the team. But it turns out that this little tidbit that Carrie had found was very instrumental in everything that happens here because Charlotte is like, yeah, it's my company. I was going to have like homemade jams and jellies on a farm and all of this
Yeah.
stuff. And
I, I love Will's like, well, that's interesting because it doesn't seem like this company you set up has actually had provided any products or any revenue or anything. So why is there so much money being pumped into this thing? So, I mean, they kind of catch her flat-footed there in that regard.
yeah, and then Kalinda again, just like buddying up with the medical examiner, like busts right into the autopsy and finds out that there's like misplaced maggot that should not have been in.
That is a great band name. Misplaced Maggot. That's write that down. The Misplaced Maggot, TM, the Good Pod.
Yeah,
That's a great name for something. I don't know what it's a great name for, but Misplaced Maggot is a great name.
well, the Emmy is a little confused that this maggot is there, and also that like the tissues that are still on the skull are still there because it's been 2 years since Carolyn's been murdered, and like things should be in a different state if Carolyn's skull was originally found where they found it. So this is
Yeah.
letting Kalinda to be like, but does it track if she was on a farm?
Dun dun dun. Because I mean, we hear Charlotte talk about the fact that she lives out in a farm, and then the very next scene it cuts to them finally, and the guy's
Like
like,
automatically.
this maggot is usually found with livestock. It's like, oh, like you said, it's like kind of like on a farm. Like they might as well just look right at the camera. Like, you mean at a farm?
Like Simone
Like,
Biles
yeah,
it. Like,
yeah,
yeah, I feel like sometimes in The Good Wife, like the ending of cases can go like super fast because it went to like, I was gonna have this company on a farm for jams and jellies. That's not true. here's a skull, should be at a farm, and then all of a sudden we're finding the rest of the body on the farm,
Yep.
which is also like a wooded area, did not look like a farm at all. But and then all of a sudden, like Charlotte's getting like arrested for the murder of her mom. Like it just all kind of
Yeah.
like sped up there at the end.
Yeah, and we just and so the story is just like, and they never really explain why, but the way they found a lot of this stuff out is that, as we said, Charlotte was paying for Marielle's rehab treatments out of this account that was based on this dummy company that Charlotte started out of the company, out of the family's trust funds. And the reasoning is that, Carolyn was not arguing with Colin about the money; she was
Right.
arguing with Charlotte about the money because uh Carolyn and Marielle didn't get along, so
Well,
Carolyn didn't like the fact that Charlotte was paying for Marielle's rehab. But for me, I'm just like, that's kind of that's an unneat way to tie the story up. Like, it doesn't really, you don't really explain why Charlotte decided to pay for Marielle's rehab treatments. It was kind of a messy way to tie up the story,
well,
in
and I
my
think,
opinion.
yeah, that's totally by design because the last scene we see between Colin and Alicia is like Colin stops by to like drop off a thank you gift, which is a print that she had seen at his house. And Alicia, like just looking at the print, is like, you did it. Right. Like she still has this instinct that Colin was behind this in some way. So, like, the show is still going to keep this haze around Colin's character and whether he actually did it for some time. Like I said, I still can't remember if he's
Yeah.
innocent or guilty, but I do know that every time he shows up, it's kind of like this gray area character that we're gonna see. But Alicia still has her gut feeling that he did this, and I mean, he's cunning enough to sleep with his wife's sister, I guess, that he could probably also figure out how to frame his stepdaughter for the murder of his wife.
Well, I
Like,
mean,
there's a lot
it wouldn't
there.
take it wouldn't take too much. I mean, if he had just buried her out there from the very beginning and then decided to go dig up the skull and put it in his old penthouse, that's not too far fetched, I would think. And as soon as that rationale was given to us, that it was Charles, like, that seems a little interesting, and then the show went ahead and was like, yeah, yeah,
Well,
we're not giving you, we're not closing this case out. We're not giving you the true full story about whether or not Charlotte did it. And if Charlotte didn't do it and Sweeney just like set her up like that, that is genius. Like, that's crazy, and it's terrible that Charlotte is going to go to jail for killing her mom. She didn't really do it.
well, and I feel like if this episode had aired in 2024, there would be definitely much more conversation around like who told the police to start looking there for remains. It was just kind
Right?
of like, oh, they found remains. I'm like, 2 years after, new people have moved into this house. Like
Yeah.
show some sort of thing of like they were gardening and they found something. Like we have no idea why these remains were found, and I think in 2024 that definitely would have been part of the conversation. They just kind of gloss over it in 2010. But yeah,
Yeah, sometimes they fumble the bag a little bit in the quick endings of these stories.
yeah.
And it's so interesting because, I mean, it makes sense that Charlotte, I guess, would have killed her mom because her mom was mad about her paying for her rehab. I mean, I'm like, is that strong of an ending?
I would think that Carolyn would have to have something on Charlotte. So, like, other than the fact that Charlotte took all this money from the family trust to start this quote unquote company that ended up funding her aunt's rehab or whatever, what does Carolyn have on Charlotte that Charlotte doesn't want Carolyn to talk about or
Maybe it's like
do?
some embezzling of funds or
I
something.
know. Yeah, I have no.
Contracts.
She was,
They didn't. They
or
didn't
she was
really.
gonna like do a smear campaign on Jam. I have no idea. You know.
Oh, well, here, but you're doing the Marissa thing. You're right. You're writing the show that wasn't
I know.
that wasn't out there. I think for the show that we got, I'm just like, I'm like, it
Fair.
wasn't as strong. It wasn't as strong as a good wife usually is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I was talking to my therapist about how I can rewrite stories for like everyone in my life. She's like, "You're really good at that." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. It's a
Yeah,
thing."
we know. Everyone, everyone listens to Marissa's podcast. We
Yeah,
know.
it's a thing. Anywho, okay, so that was what was going on. Our introduction to Colin Sweeney. At the same time, Peter's retrial hearing is started. This is kind of an interesting time for Alicia and Peter. We see Alicia kind of like being involved, not being involved. We don't necessarily see her doing a lot of emotional processing, but we definitely see her put up some boundaries in the situation. Um, the first thing we see on the lawyer side of the story is a meeting with Matan. So our good friend Peter decides, "Hey, Matan, we're going to call you to the stand, and we just want to remind you of the fact that I gave you this job, and I promoted you four times, and Childs hasn't promoted you once since this entire time. Oh, and by the way, we also told Childs to come here at the exact same time so that he can see that we're having this conversation and kind of intimidate you into testifying the way we want you to testify."
I mean, listen, Peter is an a-hole, but he's a smart a-hole. Okay, he knows what he's doing. He's like, he basically calls Matan in to be like, so you and me, we're buddies, right? Like we're tight.
Remember what I
I
did for
was there for
you?
you.
Yeah.
I hired you, my G. Like you're my guy, right? And Matan for his part is just so is a kind of upstanding Matan. He's like, yeah, I had so much respect for you until you had you were pumping Alicia for information on your on other cases. Like, okay, Matan, like grow up, guy, grow up,
He
dude. Like,
always stands for the truth, Jason.
yeah, grow up, man, grow up. But yeah, I love the way that they made it so that Childs and Matan would run into each other, and Matan sees Childs, who is literally his boss now,
Yeah.
and he's just like, listen, they call me here. I wasn't doing anything crazy. Like I'm on your side. You're my boss. You're my guy. And Childs like, all right, calm down, Matan. Like go ahead and run and be on your way. I understand. I get it. They're just using you as a puppet. It's cool.
I did like when Childs was like, "Next time, just call me so I know like
Yeah.
to show
Like
up at all."
let's skip all the production and
Yeah.
just just
Yeah.
just tell what you want to tell me.
So Matan takes the stand and testifies that Childs did ask Matan to keep an eye on Peter during this period of time because he thought that there was like a hidden motive and payoffs that were happening for the cases that got PD or DP'd, which are denied
Can we come up
prosecution.
can we come up with a different acronym? Can we come up with a different thing for that other than DP? I'm just saying, not for any other reason, but like just not great. Can
No,
we come up with a different acronym for
no.
that? Like,
But they thought they were so cool in 2010.
like DC maybe dropped cases, something.
Or
Just not
like, why can't you just say like not prosecuted? Like, is it that hard?
something
We
else.
don't
Just not
have to.
DP.
That's the whole
Just
thing.
not
Is
DP.
like we don't need to. We don't need to have an acronym for every single thing in the world.
Yeah.
Like I will die on this hill. Like it's okay to say do not prosecute. Like
Yeah, it doesn't take that much longer to actually say
no.
it out loud, right?
Yeah.
I just think that DP is not the way to go. For no other reason, just
No.
it's weird.
But there is.
We're not gonna dive into that. I mean, it's something that Colin Sweeney probably would have been into. I'm just gonna
It's a
say
family
that.
pod. It's
But
a family pod.
yeah, we're not gonna go too deep into it. But I think probably we could have just come up with a better way to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Golden's saying like, yeah, okay, he did that, but what happened with those cases anyway? They got dropped anyway. Like, so was Peter really doing anything wrong? Golden is very good at just dropping little like seeds of doubt along the way. Like, is it a stretch? Yes. Is there things? But he's making these points of like what Peter did didn't even matter in the long run, and so they're
Yeah, and
flying high at this point.
the look of realization on Matan's face as he thinks about it, he's like, you know, yeah, we still didn't prosecute those cases. That's weird.
Yeah.
That's really weird. Just a look on his face of like, huh, interesting. It's like, yeah, it is. Like you said, Daniel does a great job of kind of prosecuting cases in kind of this kind of leisurely manner. He's just like, I'm just curious. What happened to those cases anyway? He's like, oh yeah, we didn't prosecute them. Listen, I still don't trust Daniel because he never plays a good guy. I never trust Olivia Pope's daddy.
No.
But he's good at his job. I'll say that.
Um he is kind of like a much more matured and seasoned version of Nancy in this situation because he's just like,
Yeah,
just tell me, like, what happened with that? Very casual, as you were saying.
yeah.
Well, it turns out that like they're riding high at this point. They're like, we got this in the bag. We're gonna get a retrial. This is great. Until they learn that the Russian mobster that Peter paid off to keep Amber Madison from a few episodes ago, the prostitute that was trying to get even more money from the situation, try to keep her quiet. Well, it turns out that that mobster was murdered. So
Yeah,
all gloves are off here.
their leverage was murdered. That's
Yeah.
that doesn't happen every day. There's how unlucky do we have to be? Like it's like the Russian mobster we were using to threaten this lady is dead. Like, oh, poor us. Like, okay, you're not exactly the good guys here, so I'm not sure how to feel about the fact that you were threatening this
Yeah.
woman to stop talking, got murdered. Am I supposed to feel bad for Peter? I don't know. That's such a great complexity of this character in this situation. It's like, I mean, I know you want me to feel bad for you, but you were threatening this woman
Yeah.
with harmful action if she talked. Like,
I was like cheering for the situation. I was like, yay. But
yeah,
then like the next scene we see where Peter is like explaining this to Alicia, I'm like, oh, this is gonna suck for Alicia because she's like, I'm not gonna be there. Like this could happen, but
yeah.
I'm not gonna listen to this. And then we get this exchange of basically like what is gonna happen at the house when Peter comes back. And Alicia, I have to say, love that she has a plan. Love that she came in and laid down the law. She's like, you're gonna sleep in the maid's room. Um, you're not going to do
I mean,
anything with the kids. Like Jackie's still going to be taking care of the kids, all of this stuff. And then Peter does this whole like, but don't you love me?
how
And I
dare
wanted
you?
again, like I never punch anybody really ever. But if Peter was a real person and really in front of me, I do not like him.
You at the very least try to shake some sense into him. Like,
Yes. I would be
dude,
like,
do you understand?
snap out of it.
Yeah, and I loved how because we've been kind of going over this territory for like in other episodes before this of like, what are you going to do? We're just like, oh, I don't know yet. I love that Alicia just flat out just like you like she spells it out for him like because I think Peter had this dream right
Yeah.
of for when he comes home he's just gonna come home he and Alicia gonna sleep in the same bed again he might get some some nookie he might get some he might get some
So
decline
delusional.
he might get
So
some declined
delusional.
prosecution or something but he just had this vision of just everything's go right back to the way it was and Alicia in this moment clearly states, let's kind of clearly shatters that dream of like, no, you're going to go in the maid's room. Like, and I mean, and us poor people used to call that a guest room. Okay.
Yes, us
Not,
poor people.
not the maid's room. Like, okay. I see what world you're coming from, but all right. It's like, yeah, you're going to sleep in there
Well,
and
if
you're,
or you're we repurpose this like so and so is now sharing a room and you will be in this other room. Like sometimes there is no guest room. Sometimes there's a couch.
yeah,
Sometimes
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like at the very least, it's a guest room, not a maid's room. Like, oh my
yeah.
gosh, yeah. But she just clearly tells him, "We will not be sleeping in the same bed together." Like, and that's that. And he just has this like this kicked puppy look on his face, like, "But you don't love me anymore," or something like, bruh. And she tells us straight, like, "I have been deeply hurt. Like,
Yeah.
this hurt me bad." I mean, just the most uh just the straight truth of it all because we've been kind of beating around the bush not saying what really felt like no I have been deeply hurt and it's going to take me a while to heal from it and
Yeah.
until if and when that happens we will be sleeping apart. I just loved how clearly and plainly she said it because we haven't gotten that up until now and I love that it was cut and dry.
Yeah.
Boom.
And it sets the stage of like you're coming into my world now. Like this
Yeah.
is you may be out of jail, but you're in my jail now. Like basically you're
Yeah.
gonna play by my rules. We're gonna do things my way. And she needs time. And I don't who can blame her? You know? Like who can blame her? So I loved that scene, but I also hate Peter. Don't you think do you ever think we'll get back together? No, I don't. I don't think so, Peter. Bye. Goodbye.
Why are you talking like a lawyer?
Yeah.
So I am one
Yeah. Oh.
ass.
Oh.
You're
And
not talking like my wife. You're talking like a lawyer. Shut up.
yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah.
You're lucky. Yeah, he is so lucky that Alicia is even willing to let
Even
him live there.
in the room,
Right.
even in the
You could be
room.
going to a halfway house, my G. Like you could be going somewhere else.
Yeah.
But Alicia is at least for you letting you share the same apartment as her. So
The
take what you
air,
can
the
get.
same air.
Yeah. Take what you can get, my boy, and just go
Work
home,
with it.
get in your maid's room and be happy. All right? Damn.
Thank you, Jason. I
Can't
needed
have it all, Peter. You
yeah.
can't have it all.
Exactly. Speaking of not having it all, Amber is on the stand. Amber Madison. Now, Amber Madison was used in the prostitution bribe situation with Peter. So, the prosecution here, our good friend Pedro Pascal,
Yeah, Sissy Pedro.
put her on the stand to say that she was paid by, or no, sorry, I'll take that up. Pedro wasn't the person who did it. Golden puts Amber on the stand to basically say, hey, not Peter also paid you. You got paid by the people in charge of this whole bribe scheme thing, but then Peter paid you. So why would Peter pay you if you knew, or if he knew about this ring where you were getting paid anyway? That was like the whole argument. And not only that, but she was paid into an entirely different account from Peter's personal account under an entirely different name. So
Under her real name.
yeah.
Loretta Krispinski. Okay. That was hilarious. It was like, it just kind of tears away the facade of Amber Madison. It's like,
Yeah.
nah, bro, you're Loretta Krispinski. Okay. Like, that's your given name. So cut out the act. And it's just like, she was so confident up there on the stand of like, they don't know about that. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, we do. We know. We got you. Like, it was such a shattered moment for old Amber.
Yeah, and this is where we see like Pedro's face is just like, oh, they
Like,
found
oh
that,
shit.
didn't they?
I'm not even sure he knew about that because
Right.
he looked like he was just like, say what? Like, Loretta, how could you? How could you not
You're
tell me
who
this, Loretta?
now? You're what now? You're
Yeah. And I mean, so this is like, and like I said, I don't remember how all of this resolves
Yeah.
itself,
Yeah.
but just seems more and more likely that Glenn Childs is kind of has all this set into motion. Like maybe Glenn is the one that hired these people, these land developer people, to pay Amber to seduce and sleep with Peter. So I mean, as someone that doesn't remember, now Marissa, you can plead the fifth if you want, if you remember or
I
not.
honestly don't remember. I
Right.
just like
But it just seems,
my hatred for Peter just overshines any
yeah.
outcome.
And listen, that's not to say anyone should feel sorry for Peter, but it seems like because Peter, out of the goodness of his own heart, is paying his prostitute out of his own pocket.
Out of
And
the goodness of his
yeah,
own
I
heart.
bet you that's how Peter looks at it, though. He's like,
Oh.
"No, I forthrightly paid this prostitute for her services." Like, but it's made to look as if Peter has these weird dealings where he will
Yeah.
drop these cases if these people pay for his prostitute, and that in and of itself is just a weird arrangement to have with someone. Like, hey, how about this? You pay for my prostitute, and I'll look the other way on these cases. That in and of itself is a weird ask. It's like, could you give me money to pay a prostitute? Like, no, could you? I just want to cut out the middleman. Can you pay the prostitute for me? It's so weird. So there's records on your books of paying this prostitute. That's so weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, it's looking more and more like I think Glenn Childs probably has his hand all the way up in this.
Well, something is definitely up with him because he comes out in and gives Peter this. He makes an offer, and he basically says, like you could go home. You could go home tomorrow, as long as the conviction stands and you don't run against me. Time served. You're free to go." And that was a much larger offer than I was expecting, especially at the stage. Like again, this is just the retrial hearing to see if there will be a retrial, and Childs is basically giving Peter a way out.
Well, because and listen, if I go with my theory that Glenn Childs has set this whole thing up, he's getting dangerously close to being found out.
Yeah.
So he's just like, let me cut and run with what I can right now, and just get this whole thing dropped so it doesn't fall back on me. I still want to have my position as a state's attorney, but let me give Peter just this way out. So hopefully we can just drop this whole thing. I can stay state's attorney. He won't run against me, and we'll find out about what I did in this situation. So it looks kind of desperate on Childs' part. And
Yep.
I think Peter definitely sees that. He's like, oh, okay. You definitely got something going on here. So we'll see. We'll see if he takes the offer or not. But I think Peter at this point sees the desperation in this offer that Glenn Childs makes. Because of course, Glenn comes in, he's like, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna do you a solid, Peter. Like I'm gonna let you see your children's proms. I'm gonna let you see them get married. And you don't want,
Graduation.
yeah, you don't want 9 more years of prison, do you, Peter? So just take this offer I'm giving you as a gesture of good faith. And it's like, child, please. I know who you are. I know what you're all about. You don't give out good deals. You're not doing this for me. You're doing this because this is something in it for you and you don't want to be found out. I think Peter, he doesn't say it out loud. I think he definitely sees desperation in this offer.
Yeah, I'm with you. And we don't understand the desperation with this last part of the episode here in
Yeah,
terms of adding the storyline about Diane and guns. So at the beginning of the entire episode, there's this conversation between Diane and Will about like the direction of the firm. They're like still talking about how Stearns
Stern.
left, and he has a vote and she has a vote, and they want to go in different directions. Diane is looking to like do some sort of more political leaning type of cases, specifically because like she turned down this judgeship. I think is like she still wants to make a difference, so she's looking to take over the gun lobby. For some, we don't like, this is a very thinly veiled reason for this entire thing. While Will has decided, okay, we're just going to find rich people and defend them whether they're murderers or not. So we've
Right.
got two different ways of looking at solving this problem. So Diane, I think what's interesting about this storyline is it does address guns in Chicago. And as someone who lives in Chicago, a lot of people recently came to the city of Chicago. There was a big party here for the
Yeah.
DNC. And
Mhm.
it was really interesting to see people say it's not as dangerous as they thought it was going to be. Or, like there were a lot of comments about how nice it was and things like that. Every time I travel, someone will ask me, how could you live in or near Chicago? Because aren't you afraid you're going to get shot? And we're not the only city in America that deals with this.
Well, I'm gonna say, like Marissa, I guess, like we're in two of the murder
Yeah.
capitals of the world, and you're in Chicago. I'm in Baltimore, and it's like, I hear the same things you do. Like, oh, you live in Baltimore.
How
Isn't it
could you,
dangerous there?
Jason?
Like, yeah, I mean, and The Wire did us no great
Yeah.
shakes. Okay, so it's like that's such a dangerous place to live. How can you live there in Murderland instead of Maryland, of course? So yeah, I definitely hear you on that. So yeah, it makes sense that they're using the storyline as kind of an in on that.
Like an explainer of sorts, because one of
Mhm.
the things, like, she has this table of guns, and one of the things that is brought up, first of all, Julius is back, but
Yeah.
one of the things that brought up is Calinda's like, I bought these all 2 miles outside of Chicago. No gun can legally be purchased in the city of Chicago. There's like, you have to go somewhere else to get a gun in the city of Chicago. And so this is, I think, trying to show people and explain to people that like this is how it works, because
Yeah.
later on we
They're probably like
see,
there are probably like 200 gun stores right outside
yeah,
of like literally over the city line of Chicago.
yeah, it's like, or like, and a lot are in Indiana, and it just like comes back
Mhm.
and forth across the state borders, and that's gun commerce, I guess. Like, I don't really know that much about it, but like that's how it is. And I think a lot of people don't realize that that's what makes it a little bit more dangerous than it could be, because it's not like there's no regulation here because we're not selling anything. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing to kind of watch over it. But so she has this table of guns. Julius is calling Diane Sarah Palin with this whole situation. He still has not
I
been
love
named, like, for the audience
Yeah,
at all.
so
We have no
weird, so
idea who this
weird.
dude is.
I love the look. There's like 5 of them in a conference room, and they're all just handling these guns. Like, I'm surprised Carrie didn't, like, do the whole gangster,
Oh,
how they show them in
the
movies,
side.
like how he was trying to hold a gun sideways. I'm surprised Carrie didn't do something like that. But yeah, it was so weird just to see them all like handling and messing around with guns. It's such a funny shot.
Yeah, it was weird. So they have the conference room full of guns, and then Diane and Kalinda are trying to like go buy a gun, and this is where she finds out that like you need a FOID card, a firearm identification card.
I think it's a firearm owner
Oh,
identification.
there you go. Yeah. So she needs one of those. She doesn't have one. And the lady's like, well, just have your friend Kalinda, who has one, buy it for you. And Diane's like, oh, okay, well, then that's our case. That's how it
Hmm.
works. I'll move forward with the suit. But then we find out later that she dropped the suit, but still moves forward with exploring guns because Diane is getting threats from an old client, like an old person that she worked on a case with, saying like, I'm gonna come and I'm gonna kill you. And then
Mhm.
Diane also went to his parole hearing and was also threatened at the parole hearing. So Diane is really worried about her safety. And so this, I think, was the underlying reason for this storyline, but
Yeah.
they kind of stacked some things on top of it to kind of show the gun context within
Just a
both
wee, just a
Diane as a
wee,
character and Chicago.
yeah, just a wee little commentary on gun control
Yeah,
in
just a little bit.
in the U.S.
We're just
It was
gonna
just a
like
little
sprinkle it in.
commentary storyline.
Yeah.
I did love the quality time that Clinda and Diane got together as Clinda, teaches Diane how to use a gun and how to
Whew.
shoot guns. That was a fun little. It was a fun little road trip. It was just like, but at the end of the episode, I'm just like, what was this for? But I mean,
Well,
it was a good. You explained it well.
I think that like also thank you. I think that like we also see the difference between Kalinda. Kalinda is basically telling like you pick up a gun to kill someone. You do not pick up somebody to you do not pick up a gun to like harm someone. Diane is very very like uncomfortable with the situation. We also learned that Diane's father had like is a big player in the state of Illinois and has also like introduced legislation around guns in Illinois. So she's not just like this is a big weird step for her. In the end, there's an opportunity. She hears noises in her house and she almost shoots Justice, her dog. So this kind of like freaks her out. She's like, I don't need this in the house anymore. But at the same time, Diana's liking this power that she has, and she's afraid of who she'd become if she had access to it all the time. And this is something. This is like Diane Lockhart lore. Like this is something that will continue through
Yes.
all of the series that Diane Lockhart is in at any time. So I think this is like the origin story for her as a person in
Yeah,
this area.
and those that know the Diane Lockhart journey see how interesting it is that this is how she's feeling, and this is she's so afraid to be associated with. I'll just say this:
Yes.
she doesn't want to be associated with guns. Let's just say she gets very associated with gun things
Yes.
later down the line, and those that know. If you know,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah, and well, I mean, self-defense as a whole is always something that Diane is thinking about and is trying to explore. So while this was a messy storyline, I think it definitely is like a cornerstone. They could have done it much more eloquently. They could have done it more elegantly.
Mhm.
But it touched on a lot of like, hey, we're going to tell you about Guns in Chicago. Hey, we're going to tell you about Diane as a character and a little bit more about Kalinda and her like
Yeah,
lethalness.
it just
It just was a
it
little
just
out of sorts.
yeah, it felt so outside of everything. It almost felt like they could have shot this one storyline, and then after they shot the whole season, it was like, which of these episodes feels short? Let's throw
Yeah.
this in there to kind of supplement the
Yeah.
storylines. It just felt so isolated from everything else.
Yeah, it like had nothing to do with the case of the week. It had nothing to do with Peter. I think, it will play in longer into the firm politics, but we got nothing going on about that at this
Yeah.
moment. So
No kid detectives this episode. I feel like every episode we don't have the kid detectives is probably going to be a good episode. A plus episode for me.
yeah, it was good. This episode really just shows how they can handle like such complexity in character throughout all three of these cases. There's a lot of nuance happening in all three of these storylines throughout this entire episode, and it's what really makes me appreciate The Good Wife as a whole.
Yeah, great episode. Marissa,
Yeah,
there's another one wrapped up for us.
we did it.
Let's tell the people where they can find you online, how they can keep up with you, all that good stuff.
If you're looking to hear more from me, you can find me on Instagram and threads at it's me, Marissa G. There is no apostrophe because you cannot apostrophe. I always forget to say that, but
You
yeah,
cannot apostrophize.
you cannot apostrophize in a username. So it's me, Marissa G. I'm on Instagram and threads. And if you check out the link in my bio, it will always tell you what I'm up to most recently. So that's what's up with me. Jason, what's up with you?
Awesome. For me, you can find me on Twitter at JAYR1085. As far as podcasts go, this is my main gig right now. I may or may not have done something about Love is Blind UK over on the Rob Has a
Ooh.
Podcast channel most recently. Uh, uh, Behind the scenes tip, we record these ahead of time, so I'm not positive if I have recorded or have not recorded that episode yet, or if I ever will. But if I have, go find it on the Rob Has a
There's
Podcast network.
a timeline, Jason, where you have. It's just a matter
Yeah.
if we're on that timeline or not.
So it may or may not have happened yet. So go check it out if I have on the Rob Has Podcast network. So yeah, until next week, Marissa,
Yeah.
stay good.